The following program is a production of Hō'ike Community Media. Island Alert was made possible in part by the Kauai Island Utility Cooperative.
Aloha, and welcome to the show where we get to know Kauai's first responders. I'm Max Richardson.
And I'm Chief Todd Raybuck.
And today we're going to be talking all about the Kauai Police Department. All right, so let's just jump right into it. Now, this being the inaugural episode, actually, this is the first ever episode of this show. Let's do some get-to-know-you questions. So, for starters, how long have you been Chief of Police?
Well, I was sworn in as the Chief of Police in April of 2019. So just about 5.5 years now as the Chief.
Okay, cool. All right. And did you start on Kauai as Chief, or did you, I know you came over from Nevada, but did you come over as a more rank and file officer and work your way up, or were you appointed as Chief?
I was appointed as Chief, so I started my law enforcement career actually as an Air Force cop stationed on Oahu at a place called Wheeler Air Force Base that now is Wheeler Army Base.
Okay.
But that's where I started my law enforcement career and had the fortunate opportunity to get introduced to the amazing Hawaiian Islands and the beautiful culture here and the beautiful people. And so from there, I finished my tenure with the Air Force and ended up in Las Vegas and spent 27 years rising through the ranks, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and retired as a captain, a bureau commander.
Awesome. Okay. So this is your retirement gig?
This is a retirement gig, yes.
All right.
But it has not been like retirement. It's been a lot. It's not been a cushy retirement gig.
Well, you're still working. That's where you messed up, is you?
Yeah, I failed at retirement the first time. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and that happens to the work-motivated folks, I know.
Not in a bad way. I don't want to suggest that this hasn't been an amazing experience, but
no, I'm just sure it's hard work being any police officer, but the Chief of Police, I'm sure it's not the easiest job.
It has its moments.
So, all right, so you were a cop in Las Vegas. How similar or dissimilar is that from Reno 911?
That's a really good question. It's very different, actually.
Okay.
True story, though, when I was a young cop, I worked in a small area south of Las Vegas called Laughlin. It was right on the Colorado River across from Bullhead, Arizona. And my lieutenant thought it'd be a great idea to put us in shorts. And so we wore shorts and shirts instead of a full uniform because it's very hot down there, 120 degrees.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that the creators of Reno 911 saw us wearing those shorts. And that was where the idea of Reno 911 was born.
So you're a fashion icon.
Let's just say they were the most uncomfortable shorts I've ever worn in the line of duty.
I can imagine. I can only imagine. All right. So take me through the journey, I guess, so you mentioned you were in the Air Force. Did you, like when you were a little kid, did you always want to be a cop when you grew up? Was it something you just kind of fell into? Tell me about the journey from being a regular kid to now the Chief of Police.
Yeah, I did pretty much always want to be a police officer. I grew up, one of my greatest mentors growing up was my godfather. He was the Chief of Police in the community that I lived in. There were two experiences that really led me into law enforcement. That was the first one, obviously. But the second one was, it's called a bike rodeo. And it's where you bring the kids together and you teach them how to ride their bicycles safely and navigate our streets and sidewalks. And so when I was in elementary school, I had gone to a bike rodeo and two police officers. Today we call them SROs, but back in those days we called them officer friendly. And those police officers made me feel important. They paid attention to me. They got to know me, and they showed me that they cared about me. And that made a lasting impact on me and really opened up the door for me to see police officers in a positive light and led me to want to go into the career field where hopefully, it's not always a touchy-feely situation when you get to meet people in this profession, but there are plenty of times where you can make a difference in people's lives, and that's why I was drawn to the profession.
That's awesome. And I think that's kind of the best reason to want to be a police officer, is to make a positive difference in people's lives. And
Yep.
yeah, that's cool. And so, okay, so you joined the Air Force. Did they call it military police in the Air Force, or does it have a different?
At that time, it was called security police.
Okay.
But yeah, military police. And I did that for 4.5 years. And it was an incredible experience to be able to. My youngest son just joined the Air Force last month. He graduated from basic training.
Oh,
it was the first time. Thank you. It's the first time in 30 years that I've been back on that parade field, and it was a rush of emotions.
How cool. So your son marched on that same parade field that you did.
The same exact parade field I did. So it was a very emotional moment for me to be able to experience that.
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, congratulations to Airman Raybuck.
Thank you.
All right, so I guess we can move right on to the meat and potatoes questions. What would you say are the biggest challenges facing the Kauai Police Department when it comes to maintaining public safety on our island?
I think the biggest challenge for the Kauai Police Department is really the challenge that law enforcement faces all over the country right now, and that is being able to recruit and retain police officers. This job has always been a very difficult job, and the men and women that do this job, not just in uniform, but all the professional support services, our dispatchers, our clerks, all of the back of the house folks, they really commit a lot and sacrifice a lot to serve our community. And so it's become increasingly more difficult to be able to perform these professions and to find people that want to go into this profession today. I think for as far as maintaining public safety, it's the same as everywhere. Economic challenges, substance abuse issues, things that, impact every community, impacts us here as well.
Okay. So, all right. So retention was a thing you mentioned. And I hear that being mentioned. All the different chiefs, all the different department heads, pretty much everybody is talking about that. That's a big problem, retention, trying to get people to want to have government jobs, and especially like uniform jobs, firefighters, police officers. And I guess if anybody knew the answer, then we wouldn't have that problem. But just in your opinion, what do you think is the answer? How do we entice people to want to be police officers?
Yeah, I think that it's a very difficult thing to put it's not just one factor. There's many different factors, and different people have different reasons. I started to see a transition about 15 or so years ago in law enforcement where, when I joined policing in Las Vegas a little over 32 years ago. And when I joined the police department, the prevailing perception was, I'm going to join the police department and I'm going to stay for 30 years. Our workforce in every industry today don't have that same philosophy. I think most industries today see a lot shorter commitment to one specific career field or one specific employer. And so I don't think law enforcement's any different than the majority of industries today. It makes it much more difficult for us in law enforcement, though, because the pressures of the job, it's a stressful job. I think economics plays into it. Everybody on Kauai knows that this is a very, very difficult place financially to own a home, and also, especially on a government salary, and to raise a family. It's a complicated issue. And it's not like throwing darts and hitting one bullseye and solving the problem. It's a spectrum of challenges that we have to continuously try to navigate and minimize along the way.
All right, that's a good answer. Well said. So there's a big houselessness problem on Kauai, and I imagine it can be a pretty thorny issue for police to deal with. How do you walk that line between maybe punishing someone for a situation that might be beyond their control, poverty, substance addiction, et cetera, versus keeping good order and discipline in our public places?
Yeah, houselessness is a challenge nationwide. I mean, I travel here and there throughout the year for personal reasons and for the job, and I go into different communities, and it's an issue that affects everybody today. Even in some places where you didn't have the same issue 10, 15 years ago. I think that, for us with our houselessness issue, it's even more difficult because there are so many families that that are literally one paycheck away from potentially being houseless for a variety of reasons. The lack of affordable housing, the cost of living that we talked about a little bit earlier. Houselessness isn't a crime, and the police department doesn't want it to be a crime. And so we try really, really hard to temper our response towards criminal activity. We only can enforce crimes. And I think it's important, it's difficult when our police officers are called in and they tell people that they have to move because of a trespass issue, because of criminal activity, because, public health. Some of these, unfortunately, these encampments grow so large that it really becomes a danger to public health because of the unsanitary conditions. And so we have to come in and take action to try to mitigate that for the entire community. And it puts our police officers in a very difficult position because they now are being asked, where am I supposed to go? And we don't have an answer for them. And trying to be compassionate towards people who are in a really tough situation. And so it's a problem. And that's why as a community, we have to find ways to try to address this issue because it's not a law enforcement issue.
On the subject of houseless folks, what can you tell me about that big homeless encampment that was over near across from the rotunda at the county building? I noticed there were a lot of trees had been cut down and a lot of the folks have moved out of there.
Yeah, so we received complaints on houseless camps quite frequently, obviously. And that was one that we had received numerous complaints about. It was on private property. And so I think one of the frustrations that comes in from the community is that, using that location as an example, they call the police department and say, this houseless camp is growing, it's this, it's that. And there's no criminal nexus and it's on private property. And so the police department doesn't have legal authority to do anything about that location. It really becomes the responsibility of the property owner themselves to go in, to trespass people, to clean it up and to resolve, the situation there. And so that the property owners there had taken action on their own. And as you can see the result, a marked difference now between where it was and where it is today.
Moving on, maybe a little more happier topic. Are there any community outreach programs or initiatives that the department is focusing on that address specific issues on the island? I think we all know about KPAL, but are there any more specifically tailored programs?
Yeah, I don't want to brush over KPAL though, because that's just an incredible program. I mean, anytime a police department our size, so we're a mid-sized police department by national standards. We're the smallest agency in the state, but we're a mid-sized police department by national standards with 160 authorized positions, but actually we're operating at about 131 to 133. When you take a look at our KPAL program, I can tell you that, when 700 to 800 youth come out to play football on the weekends, when we have boxing programs and we have baseball programs and we have, art programs. In fact, we've had some programs here at Hō'ike for, you guys have helped sponsor some youth programs to help kids get involved into production and TV and stuff like that. And so, those types of programs, if we want to make changes in our community, you have to invest in our children. And so our KPAL program, I think, is one of the highlights and the success stories of our department. But there are a lot of other ways that we engage the community or other types of outreach and initiatives. Obviously, one of the things that I brought to Kauai, which I love in the summertime, is our Touch a Truck program. And it's grown every year. And we have police cars and dump trucks and, boom trucks and bulldozers. And, when I was as a father, one of the books I think every parent reads to their kids when they're little is the book of trucks, right? The truck book. And you read that. And it was one of my son's favorite books. And so our Touch a Truck program brings those books to life. Neighborhood watch programs, that's important. Those programs allow members of in their community to be able to be participants in making their community safer. And then, of course, we have our partnership with Crime Stoppers. And so if people, are aware of crime or have information about crime, they can report it to us. And you can find out more information about the Crime Stoppers program by going to crimestopperskauai.org. That's crimestopperskauai.org. And there's a phone number, there's an app that you can share information anonymously with us so that we can do follow-up on investigating crimes to hopefully deter and or stop some of the criminal activity that occurs in our community.
I did not know there was an app. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Do you know much about it?
Yeah, so online, there's information on how you can download. It's called a P3 app, and it'll allow you to download either by Android or by Apple product. And that will allow you, instead of using a telephone, you can actually make a report to Crime Stoppers directly through the app. So you don't have to even pick up the phone and call. And this is a way for, if you're in an environment where maybe you don't want to pick up the phone and say, "Hi, dispatch. Yeah, there's a guy sitting next to me in a blue shirt with a beard and a microphone, and I think he's a nefarious character. He's up to no good. I saw him on the news. He's the guy that, you didn't do any crime." But that's kind of uncomfortable for people to do, right? But through the app, you could put in all of that information and report it without the person next to you even knowing that you're reporting it. So crimestopperskauai.org is the great place to find out more about the app.
It sounds like I think, we've all known that Crime Stoppers is a very useful program, but that sounds like they're just coming out with more and more useful things for the everyday citizen to have. That app sounds cool. I heard that you recently appointed a deputy chief. What can you tell me about that?
Yes, I'm very excited. Assistant Chief Mark Ozaki, a pillar in our community for a long, long time. I talked about KPAL earlier. Mark was one of the founders of the original KPAL program. He was one of the original SROs. And so his thumbprint in our community, both on and off duty, has been remarkable. And it's all over from the west side to the north shore. And he's got almost 25 years on the job, and he wants to continue to make a difference in our police department. And so I was grateful that he accepted my offer to be the deputy chief, and we'll do a promotion ceremony pretty soon. I've been on vacation, he's on vacation, and so excited about that.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. I've known Mark Ozaki since I was about 18. He was in charge of KPAL when my dad and I started the Sea Scout ship, which was originally chartered through KPAL. It's cool to see him. He's a good guy, and he strikes me as a good cop.
He's a great cop. He came up through the ranks. He knows the department very well. He knows the community very well. And so, I'm super excited to have Mark on board.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I'm excited too. So with Kauai being such a popular tourist destination, how does the department manage the unique challenges that might be posed by visitors that might not be familiar with local laws or even local custom?
Yeah, fortunately, most of our visitors abide by the law. I think one of the challenges, obviously, that we talk about quite frequently is what's described as over-tourism. We're a small island with small infrastructure. And so I think that the average daily rate of our tourists is roughly about 25,000, which is a third of our island's population. And so when you add 25,000 more people into the mix on a daily basis, obviously our roadways, it's more difficult for people to travel. We do see some increases in crime where it targets our tourists, particularly when it comes to theft and those types of issues. I think that our Kauai Visitors Bureau and the other entities have done a good job at trying to educate our tourists and our visitors how to, malama the aina and try to be a little bit more respectful. But it's a challenge, when you're talking about turning over 25,000 visitors, the people that we tell today, hey, don't park there, aren't the same people that are parking there tomorrow. Continuously communicating and educating people, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I think that's, that sounds great. Yeah, communication, I think so many problems, not just tourism related, not just law enforcement related, but I think a lot of interpersonal problems will be solved if people just communicated better.
Yeah, it's becoming increasingly more difficult for two-way communication.
Ironically, considering that communication technology and methods of communication have improved. What about drugs? I know there are some problems with illegal drug use and distribution on our island, and how do you handle these kinds of issues? What kind of cooperation do you have with state and federal agencies? What's our drug strategy look like?
Okay, well, again, we talked earlier about houselessness, and houselessness isn't unique to just Kauai, right? It's a nationwide problem. Unfortunately, substance use disorder is also a nationwide problem. And so our community isn't unique in the fact that we have a substance use disorder issue. What's unique about our community is because we are so interconnected and everybody knows everybody, that it is so much more aware in our community of the challenges that we face when it comes to drugs and illegal drug use. And couple that with the fact that our remote, community, a lack of treatment and prevention resources complicates the issue even more for us and our families. Substance use disorder it impacts most families. It impacts mine. It impacted mine. One of my close relatives suffered from substance use disorder through adolescence, high school, and his entire adult life. And tragically, last year, he lost that fight. And so, it's a challenge for all of us. And, again, I go back to law enforcement isn't the answer. Arresting people isn't necessarily, the cure. It is a necessity. And I want to make that clear. My family member would have died much, much earlier in his life had he not been incarcerated for a while and had the opportunity to, make better choices. Unfortunately, the battle of addiction is difficult, but we need to spend more time on prevention. You may get an opportunity to choose to use a drug, but you don't get a choice whether or not you'll be addicted. That's why some of our community youth programs that educate our kids, get them involved in physical activities are so important. Hopefully someday our adolescent treatment center will meet its full, capacity of providing those services to our community. We get federal grant money that comes to our island, just about $176,000 or so, I think, or $196,000 this year is our allotment. And that provides us the opportunity to do some prevention as well as doing some enforcement and going after some of the people that are responsible for bringing these drugs into our community. So I'm grateful for the participation and support that we get from all of our partners.
All right, awesome. And I'm very sorry for your loss. I know I've had friends and family who have fought that battle too, and I know like you said, it's nobody gets there on purpose.
No.
And it's a damn shame.
Thanks.
So you mentioned the remoteness of the island. That's something that's always baffled me is what a big problem or a big piece of the drug problem is ice, right? Is methamphetamine. But this island is tiny. Where's all the ice coming from? There's not like meth labs. You'd find them right away, right? So where's all this meth come from?
Yeah. I'll tell you, so how does it get here? Just like your Amazon packages do, just like our tourists do. It's parcels, it's mailed in, and it's brought in by aircraft and container. And so when you just talk about the fact that, we see 1 million visitors a year here on Kauai, a little over 1 million, and we have the smallest tourist base. think about the influx of visitors that come into, that travel through Honolulu International Airport. And every one of them, could have some of these drugs in their bags, and some of them do. And so that's how it gets here.
When you put it in those terms,
Yep.
million people.
Which one has the pound of meth,
Yeah.
Fortunately, we have, again, I go back to our partnerships with the post office, with the parcel businesses, with our federal partners. We have a lot of tools at our disposal.
So how does the department, I'm sure it doesn't happen too often, but how does the department handle complaints or concerns from the public when they do happen? What steps are taken to ensure that there's like transparency and accountability, and that someone can make a complaint and know that something's being done about it?
Yeah, so there's a couple different paths for people when they file a complaint. Obviously, one way is, and this is all on our website, Kauai.gov. You can go to Kauai.gov and then search for police department. It'll pull up that site, and there's an actual page about complaints that will it'll actually tell you what your options are. So there's that reference point. But to give you the quick overview, our community members can file complaints either by filing a complaint with the police commission and doing that through them, or they can file a complaint with the police department directly, or they can file a complaint with both. In either way, those complaints are investigated, and then a determination is made whether or not there's a preponderance of evidence to prove that the allegations were true and that action can be taken. I review every complaint that comes into the police department, and when action needs to be taken, we take action. We are building, we've looking at having a program and implementing a program called Power Engage. And so hopefully we'll have that online in the very near future. And that's going to be a program that I'm really excited about, because it will automatically generate text messages and or phone surveys to our customers. I think sometimes we forget as police officers or government workers that the people that we interface with are really our customers, right? They call this public service because we're supposed to be serving other people. And so Power Engage is going to allow us, when it's fully implemented, to be able to have our community members receive a text message or a phone call that says, hey, Officer Raybuck was just at your house. Please tell us, was he professional? Did he answer, your questions? Is there any feedback that you have? And then the police department will get in real time feedback of how our dispatchers are doing, how our clerks are doing, how our police officers are doing. And here's the best part, is they can get real-time feedback on what they're doing right. Because one of the challenges in policing today is you only hear about what people don't like that you did. And the more opportunities that we can have for our community members to share what they did, what they appreciate our dispatcher did, or our police officer did, the better it helps to reinforce those positive behaviors. It improves the morale of our employees, and it provides a better service to our community in that full circle communication gap. We were talking about communication earlier. And so I'm really excited about this program. I hope we can get it online very soon. And then that will, like I said, give us that feedback from our community on a real-time basis.
That sounds really cool. Yeah. We've sat here and talked about stuff that I wanted to talk about for this whole time, but is there anything in particular that you wanted to talk about or share with anyone who might be watching at home?
Well, we talked about it. We talked about this theme throughout, right? About the challenges that we face as a community, and also what we face as a department when it comes to our staffing and retention. And so I just really want to encourage, people to go to our website, follow our social media accounts, on Facebook at Kauai Police Department, on our Instagram at Kauai Police Department, at KPAL. Get plugged into your police department. That's what this is. It's your police department. Know what's going on in our police department, and look at the opportunities that we have. We have opportunities for dispatcher. We have opportunities for police officer. We have opportunities if you don't want to do one of those higher pressure jobs. We have accounting jobs. We have public safety worker jobs. We have a lot of open opportunities in our police department. Come work with KPD. I'd love to have you there.
All right. Well, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Chief, and thanks for helping us kick off our inaugural episode.
My pleasure.
Well, that's our show. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to have a new episode for you every single month. We're going to have different first responder agencies in here. We'll have the fire department. We'll have Ocean Safety Bureau, KEMA. I'm sure we'll have KPD in here again. And if there's any first responders that you want to hear from or any questions that you'd like to have answered, feel free to let us know. This is we're Hō'ike Kauai Community Media. We're all about the community, and this show is for you. So you can email me. My email address is at the bottom of the screen right now. And let me know your questions. Let me know who you'd like to see on the show. And tune in next month. We'll see you soon. Aloha.
Aloha.